Hi guys, and welcome back to City Skylines. As you may be able to tell, today's episode will be about foliage, also adding some row houses of course, and messing around a little bit more with flat neighborhoods, though again I forgot to add parking spaces. That's something which I'll get to in the future, don't worry about it, I'll add them eventually, but for now people are just gonna have to use the roads, I suppose. But something which I really felt the need to talk about in this video, actually, is the time-lapse speed. For those that don't already know, I speed up my videos by 12 times the speed, which means that roughly 1 hour of gameplay equals 5 minutes of time-lapse, not even roughly, really correctly, which I like, at least, and I'll explain in a bit why. But yeah, it's very fast for City Skylines, which I've got a lot of comments about, and it's something which I try to fix for this episode and decided to actually speed this one up 9 to 10 times, but it really doesn't make too much of a difference, and the thing is, I don't want to make the time lapses much slower, simply because this is the format that I like to work with. I kind of play the game for what I make rather than the gameplay as I make it, so just speeding up my gameplay like this means that I get a lot more done in shorter episodes, which is what I personally like, so what I go for. And if I would halve the speed of the time-lapse, 1 hour of gameplay would already turn into 15 minutes of video, which means that the average video would turn into either 30 to 45 minutes of time-lapse, which I would have to like talk over or put music over, which I wouldn't be a fan of, or it's going to be the same length and I'm not going to be able to get a lot done. And truth be told, for me at least, my main focus is still on getting things done and getting progress, which is why I'm still going to keep at least speeding up my time lapses by at least 9 to 12 times, but in the future I'll actually keep track of the fact that I am time lapsing and make sure that I'm not moving around as much, because really this was recorded when I still wasn't sure if I would actually put this on YouTube. So I just kind of sat on my computer and bulk recorded for some time, just enjoying the game. But yeah, I did move around a lot in that, and I think that's the main issue. So I'll definitely hold the camera still, and I know for a fact that this is gonna make the time lapses better, and you'll see why in a minute. Basically, in any case, I wanted to do the foliage in this episode, because I didn't really focus on it yet at this point, and I think it's actually one of the main things that can either make or break your city. Especially when it comes to this city over here, I really wanted to get dense foliage, and wherever I could I wanted to get some ornamental trees around the sides of the roads, basically to juxtapose the very concrete and unnatural look of the city itself, which has so many straight lines, so much asphalt and concrete, and I switched my loot there, wow. And I really wanted to get more green in there, just to at least have more different colors and make sure that not everything looked so cold and dead and unnatural, which is why, especially around the roadsides over here, I wanted to put a lot of work into actually adding ground shrubbery and other types of foliage around the roadside, which is something that I do want to expand upon in the future, because at the point of recording this I still didn't have too many ground shrubbery assets, and I think it's really important to at least be up to date on all the assets. So I've actually, right now as I speak, I have downloaded just about every foliage asset in the workshop. So I'll definitely come back to ground shrubbery and foliage as a whole later on when I actually have more things to work with. But this is just sort of laying down the bare bones and at least making sure that this area looked finished in terms of foliage. But yeah, this is basically the part where I actually did hold the camera still for a number of times, which looks so much better, I'll have to admit, and I'm so sorry about moving a lot in all of the other recordings. I just so happened to stand still for a number of times over here because I figured, it might look better on the time-lapse, but afterwards I already forgot that, but it really does work a lot better, especially as you can see as I'm placing these bushes over here. You can much more clearly see what I'm doing, and not just that, it's less nauseating to look at. So that's a bit of feedback for me in the future. I'll definitely work on that. But so far, the first episodes are gonna be the worst, I suppose, in terms of how the time lapses look. And after that, it should be more like what you're seeing right now, I suppose. Just with a different loot, because I can never make up my mind on the goddamn loot that I try to use. I also keep like watching these YouTube videos with people and of people and seeing these loots that I feel like I don't have and are beautiful and I should use, but then when I find out what loot they use, it doesn't even seem to look the same for me. I don't know if this is just a mental thing or if my game is just that fucked up, but I think it's a mental thing anyway. But yeah, I'll switch up my loot eventually, and hopefully, as I switch to the newest loot, I'll keep it that way, because so far the look of the city has changed dramatically because of the loot. Loot makes a very large difference on how your city looks, really. And I think the current one that I'm using in this video is just a little bit, not just a little bit too dark, it's actually, it's very brown, orange, yellowish. It's too yellow for me in general, and the contrast is pretty damn low, which I would also like to improve a little bit, and it's not really all that bright. I would like a little bit of a brighter one. In any case, I'm really digressing there. This area over here, I figured, would be my second sort of experimental flat neighborhood, and I'm actually much more happy with this one than the first one. It's a little bit more Dutch, especially with the large rows of flats, though I'm not too sure on the flats near the river there. The only issue really is that I forgot about the parking spaces again, which is something that I'll get to in the future, but for now we'll just have to deal with these paths. I'll just replace the paths with parking spaces in the future, but it's not too big of a deal. But I just feel stupid forgetting that the entire time. Though I do have to add, it was surprisingly easy to replace all the paths that I had alongside my flats into parking lot spaces to make things a lot more realistic. And surprisingly, there's like parking lots spaces that you can just apply as textures, as ground textures that you can pretty much just put anywhere, and you're very free to place them anywhere, and they don't really work as parks or buildings that they snap to a road and automatically make a connection. But I was actually very surprised to find out that cars can actually use them and just drive over the textures because they look like parking lots, which I find very interesting to look at. Now here's where I start building a university, but I'm gonna have to add, this is more of a placeholder university. I am not quite too happy with it. I suppose I'll let it play for a little bit, but I'll actually just skip through the major section of the university since it's quite boring. I think it's very uninspired. I just kind of wanted to place this here just to have a university sort of campus here, because anything would have been better than the mess of random buildings that I had over here before, because I just figured I would put a couple of buildings that I needed in my city over here. But this campus is just very simple and uninspired. Not to mention it doesn't even have any dorms, which is weird. How can a university not have dorms? So this is something that I'll get back to and try to improve. Probably just completely remove and redo in the future. And this is currently more of a placeholder. Anyway, over here, this is something which I actually did want to show off, is going to be a new section of the city, and this is going to require a bit of explaining before this is actually going to be clear. Hell, this is probably not even going to be clear after all my explaining because I suck at it, but I'll try to do it anyway. Basically, at some places in the Netherlands, and by that I mean two, at least two that I know of, there are very large roundabouts on major intersection points, and what you'll find is that in the middle of these roundabouts they actually have parks. People who are Dutch might know what I'm talking about, but if you don't, then it's going to be hard to find any sort of... actually, no, never mind. I think Washington has this as well. I'm pretty sure Washington has a ton of roundabouts and a couple that have parks in the middle as well. And basically what I wanted to have here was to make a large roundabout, pretty much because I needed to do something at this major intersection over here. And a small roundabout maybe wouldn't be able to take the eventual traffic, and I'm not sure if I wanted to take the risk, so I decided to place a large roundabout over here anyway, and see if I could turn it into a park. And then on both sides, where you can currently see like a little space of about 8 tiles between those roads, I want to have sort of elongations of that same park, extending in that straight line on both sides. Which is very much inspired by a park with a large roundabout in Dordrecht. If you're Dutch and you happen to know about it, this is inspired by it. And what's funny about this is actually that it's more of a modern sort of I mean, it's more of an old, actually, Dutch road layout, which so far I've actually only seen in older Dutch parts of cities. But it actually fits pretty well, I think, with the very modern city layouts, especially since the roads are also very straight, and you've got that large circle in the middle which you can work around. So I decided to place this over here anyway, and I think it works alright in the more modern neighborhood, though I suppose you be the judge. But yeah, this is what I wanted to mess with over here after I actually get these roads hooked up, because that was a very major issue for a long time. I think this time I actually got it right. This was like the final sort of solution here. Now, something I wanted to talk about is the suggestions that I've got from people, as well as some of the ideas that I have myself that I'll tackle in the future. Not to spoil you in anything that's happening in the future, but just to tell you what I am thinking of, so you don't have to worry about it, I suppose, because there's still a number of things which I'm not going to tackle too soon, but are things that I'm definitely thinking of, so you don't really have to worry about suggesting them to me or think that I'm forgetting them. There's stuff that I'll get to in the near future. For instance, elementary schools is something that I want to get to, many of them around the cities, because you'll find that a lot in the Netherlands actually. I also want to have many playgrounds, something which I definitely lack at the moment too. Shopping malls or small shopping streets just about in every block of neighborhoods is something that I want to have in the future as well, something which you very commonly see in the Netherlands. I don't know about more bodies of water, since it's quite hard to actually fit them in, especially since the map has some very smooth hills. But it's something that I'm going to try in the future. Industrial areas is something which I'll have, but at a later stage, since I want to have them close to the river and the highway, which is where I'll also add extra other things like maybe an indoor ski resort, some larger, very large like shops, like, I don't know, what sort of stuff, IKEA, things like that, and maybe an amusement park, definitely, especially with my past experience, I should have an amusement park around here somewhere. Anyway, those are just a couple of examples that I could think of. That said, I like getting suggestions or feedback, whether it's positive or negative. It always helps. And yeah, that was really about it, all I wanted to say. Still had a couple of flying camera route shots, since I figured I could have them in here, just to kind of show what the city looks like at the moment, though it's not too great. It doesn't show it all too much. I'll get the more sort of show-off shots where you can see the full layouts of the city and as it sort of grows in the future episodes. I think episode 4 or 5 is where I'll get to that. Also, in the next episode, I'm gonna get to Cauliflower Neighborhoods. For those who don't know who it is, who those are, Cauliflower Neighborhoods are sort of like a, I think they're a tongue-in-cheek name, but I'm pretty sure they're actually the real name for it, are a type of road layout which is very twisted and has sort of squiggly roads sprawled alongside a center ring road. But that's something which I'll get to in the next episode. So yeah, thanks for watching, and I'll see you later.